In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this procedural extreme rusty metal in Blender. Now, if you're a regular viewer of my channel, then you know that I create a lot of procedural material tutorials. And so this material here is my 50th material. And every time I create 10 procedural materials, then I create a Blender procedural material pack. So because this is my 50th procedural material, I've just released my Blender procedural material pack number 5. So if you'd like to purchase the material packs, I'll have the links in the description where you can purchase on my Gumroad store, and you can also get it if you join my Patreon. And I'm also selling the material packs on some other 3D model sites, so I'll have all the links in the description. And purchasing the material packs is a really great way to help support me and this YouTube channel. And if you'd like to learn how to create all of my procedural materials, then you can check out my Blender procedural material playlist on YouTube. Again, I'll have all the links in the description. So let me just show you what I have set up in the 3D space. So what I did is I added an icosphere and I subdivided it and then shaded it smooth, so we have a nice smooth sphere to preview the material. And then I also added this plane right here and I gave it a subsurface so that it's circular, and then I also gave it an emission material so that we have a nice bright light shining on our object. And then to get some very nice reflections to reflect off of the metal, I added in this HDRI right here, and this is from polyhaven.com, so it's a free HDRI, and I'll have the link in the description if you'd like to download it. So I just downloaded the 1K HDR version, and then in Blender's World, I just added this in as an environment texture to get some very nice lighting. And then I will also be using the Node Wrangler add-on in this tutorial to preview different nodes, so if you don't have that enabled, you can click on Edit and then open up Blender's user preferences. And then over there on the add-ons tab, you can just search for the Node Wrangler and just checkmark the Node Wrangler add-on. So let's get started with this material. So I'm just going to select this object, I'll click on new, and I can just call this Extreme Rusty Metal. So to start off, I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for a Musgrave texture, and let's drop the Musgrave texture right here. And then I want to Control Shift and select it to preview it. And then also I want to select the Musgrave texture and I'm going to press Control T. Again, that's using the Node Wrangler feature, and it's going to add the texture coordinate and mapping. Now I don't actually need the mapping, so I'm going to select the mapping and then I'll press X to delete it. And I can now plug the object into the vector, so I'm going to use the object coordinates, and that way it'll place the Musgrave texture more evenly on the object. Now right here, I'm going to change the Musgrave type to the multifractal. And then I want to turn the scale down a bit, so I'm going to turn the scale to a 1.3. And then I'll turn the detail all the way to the max, which is 15, so it has much more detail. Now to give it even more detail, I'm going to turn the dimension all the way down to 0, and now you can see that it has a lot more detail, and that is looking a lot like Rust. Now I want to be able to control the colors so that it looks more like Rust, because right now it's just black and white. So to control the colors, I'm going to press Shift A, and let's search for a color ramp node, and I'll just drop the color ramp right in here, and then we'll plug the height from the Musgrave texture into the factor. So I can now change the colors, and that's going to change the color of the rust. So I'm going to click on this white tab and I'm going to bring it out. And then I'm going to make this color a gray color so it looks more like metal. And if you'd like to use the same exact color that I'm using, then you can go over to the hex value and you can type in a hex value of 7F, 7C, 7A. So that is the exact color that I'll be using for the metal. Now let's also click on the black tab and we're going to make this color a dark brownish, and it's going to be slightly towards the red. And to use the exact same color that I'm using over here on the hex value, you can type in 663504. So now you can see that is looking much more like Rust. Now I do want to add one more color of Rust, so I'm going to hold down the Control key and then click right here, and that is going to add a new tab. And then this one, I want it to be kind of a similar color, but it's going to be more towards the red. And for this color, the hex value is 8F3824. So I now want to put this color into the base color of the principled. So I'm going to take the color, we're going to put that into the base color, and then I can Control Shift and select the principled to preview it. Now it isn't really looking that much like metal, and that is because there isn't any metallic values. So let's take the metallic and I'm going to turn that all the way up to 1 so that it looks much more like metal. Now it's metal all over the place, and I don't want the rust to be metallic. I want it to be more metallic where it's metal, but then where it's rust, I want that to be less metallic metallic and more rough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the height value and I can plug the height value into the metallic. That way, if I control shift and select the Musgrave texture, you can see that it's going to use this texture to tell it where it's going to be metallic and where it's not going to be metallic. So I can control shift and select the principled, and you can now see that that metal is very shiny. It looks like metal, but then right over here, the rust doesn't look metallic. So I now want to give this material another layer of rust. So to do that, I'm going to press Shift A, and we're going to search for a noise texture. Let's drop the noise texture right up here above the Musgrave texture, and then I can plug the object into the vector on the noise texture. And then let's also control shift and select the noise texture to preview it. Now on the scale here, I want to set this to 7, so it has a bit more scale, and then I will turn the detail all the way up to the max, which is 15. And then also on the roughness, I just want to give this a little bit more roughness, so I'm going to turn the roughness to a 0.65, so it just has a little bit more roughness. Now I want to make this much more contrasty so that it's more clear where that second layer of rust is. So to do that, I'll press Shift A, and I can just search for a color ramp, and we're going to drop the color ramp right in here, so the noise texture factor can go into the factor of the color ramp, and then just control shift and select the color ramp to preview it. So to make it more contrasty, I can now drag these values out, and when I drag these two values together, it's going to be more contrasty. Now I actually want to flip these values, so I'm going to bring this over here because I want the white to be over here, and then I'll drag the black tab closer as well. So I now want to mix this with the final base color. So to do that, I'll press Shift A, and let's search for a mix RGB, and I want to put the mix RGB right in here between this color ramp and the base color going into the principled. And then I want to take this color ramp and I'm going to plug this into the factor on the mix. And then I can control shift and select the mix to preview it. So because we plugged this color ramp into the mix, the values on this color ramp is going to tell it where that extra rust is going to be. So you can see that we have all these white areas right here, and that is where the extra layer of rust is going to be. So if I change color 2, that is going to change the color of that second layer of rust. So I want to change color 2 to a bright orange color. And to use the same exact color that I'm using on color 2 over here on the hex value, you can type in 954800. So you can now see that we have that extra layer of rust all over the material. So let's control shift and select the principled to preview it. Now we don't really have any control over the roughness right now. So what I want to do is make it more rough where the rust is, but then more shiny where the metal is. So to do that, I'm going to take this mix and I'll press Shift D to duplicate it, and I'll drop it down here. And then I can plug this color into the roughness of the principled. I'm now going to take this color ramp and I'm going to take the color and I'm going to put that into color 2. And then I want to take this top color ramp and I'm going to put this color into the factor. And then I don't want it to be set to mix. I'm going to change the mix to add. So it's right here, add. And then I will control shift and select the add to preview it. And then on color 1, I'm going to go to the hex value and I'm going to type in a hex value of B5, B5, B5. So it's now going to use this data to tell it where it's going to be shiny and where it's going to be rough. So let's control shift and click on the principled, and you can see that is looking much better. So the material is really starting to look cool now, but it doesn't have any bump because there is nothing going into the normal. So I want to add some bump into the normal, especially where the rust is, because I want the rust to look like it's bumping in. So to do that, let's press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a bump node, and let's click on the bump and just drop it down here. So I can first take this color from the main color ramp and I'm going to put that into the normal. Now we need to convert this to normal data because this green one here, that is color data, but the purple here, that is normal data. So we can use the bump node to convert that to normal data. So I'm going to take the bump and I'm going to put it right in here. So the color is going to go into the height of the bump, and then the normal can go into the normal. So now you can see that is looking very bumpy. Now it's a bit too strong right now, so I'll turn the strength value down to like a 0.1. So it's much less strong, but it's still bumpy. If you zoom way in there, you can see there's just a little bit of bump. Now I also want the second layer of roughness to be bumpy as well, and I want that to be more bumpy. So I'm going to take this bump and I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it, and we can drop it right here. So the normal can go through the normal, so we now have this extra height value that we can plug data into. So I'm going to take this color ramp, I'm going to take the color, and I'm going to put that into the height. And then I want it to be a bit more strong, so I'm going to turn the strength to like a 0.2 so it is more strong. And now you can see that it's much more bumpy, especially where that second layer of rust is. is. Now right now the rust is popping out, and I want to make the rust look like it's going back in. So on the second bump, I'm going to click on the invert button, and now you can see that where that rust is, it looks like it's going back in a little. Alright, so we are almost done with the material, but I do just want to add one more layer of bump just to make the metal look like it's a little bit bumpy all over the place. So I'm going to take this bump and I'll press Shift D to duplicate it, and I'll drop it down here. So the normal can just go through the normal. And then what I can do is I can take the factor here from this noise texture, and I can put the factor all the way down here onto the height. And then I don't want it to be too strong, so on this second bump here, I'm going to turn the strength down to like a 0.07, and that way it'll just give a little bit more bump to the material. And then you can just Control Shift and select the principled BSDF to preview the final material. So I'll just give this a render and we can take a look at the final thing. And there we have it. So there's the procedural extreme rusty metal. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you so much for watching. And again, if you'd like to help support me and this YouTube channel, then you can check out my Blender procedural material packs, and I've just recently released my procedural material pack number 5. The links will be in the description, and you can also purchase this single material on my Gumroad store as well as my other procedural materials. Or if you'd like to learn how to create all of my procedural materials, then you can check out my Blender procedural material playlist on YouTube. The links will be in the description. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in a future tutorial.